Oh, wow.
Yeah.
My typing makes it too bad.
Yeah, I was like.
Isolate on your own table down there.
You know, at the last meeting, I had people introduce themselves because they can't see our tickets.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah,
We should do
I usually
that.
say like, you know, go around the room and say who you are.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Just a thought.
No, it's a good idea. I thought it. So now here we are, 2 minutes early.
Right.
All right, so I'm gonna call to order the September 11th, 2023 Board of Trustees meeting. Note that it's 22 years from the fateful day. Kind of a sad day. We have a lot of orders, we have a lot of things on the agenda today, but first I'd like to go around for people to introduce themselves. My name is Mark Kissinger, I'm the president of the board. You can go this way.
I'm Kristen Roberts. I'm a public information specialist. I'm not a board member, just a recording secretary.
I'm Charmaine Regis Singer, trustee and co-vice president.
Sarah Patterson, trustee. Caroline Brigatella, trustee and secretary. Michelle Walsh, co-vice president.
Laura Tabetta.
And I'm Jeff Kirkpatrick, the library director.
And then we have a couple people remotely. We can introduce Sherry first.
I'm Sherry Whiting. I'm the district treasurer.
And then Lisa.
Lisa Scoons, I'm trustee and Upper Hudson liaison.
Okay, thank you. So the first order of business actually is trustee appointment. We had an extensive process, a lot of interest from the public. And we had a long process that we came to. We have a great trustee joining the board. Welcome, Laura. So we have to do the oath of office. So it's page 2 and 3 of the agenda, which I will administer to you, Laura. Okay. So Laura, I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
that I will faithfully discharge,
that I will faithfully discharge,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
the duties of the office of Bethlehem Public Library Trustee.
the duties of the office of Bethlehem Public Library Trustee.
Okay, welcome. Okay, so we'll sign those papers appropriately, and then you have to sign the ethics statement as well. So we have public participation. I don't see anything, anyone in the room. Do you have anything sorry, anything online? Any comment? Sure. Okay.
So I don't have any emails from the public and I don't see anything.
Okay. We'll have another chance at the end of the meeting to public participation if people that are watching want to join in. We have a bunch of meeting minutes as well, so let's just kind of go through those. There's and I'll do them one at a time. So the meeting of the board of trustees, Monday, July 10th. Which is a long, significant meeting. If you see the minutes. People want to take a second to look at the meeting minutes. Draft.
Can I just make a comment too that we reviewed these also, but did not vote on them at the last meeting because we didn't have the quorum in the room, so. Yeah.
Okay, so if there's any, I'll take a motion on those minutes.
So moved.
Need a second? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
So-
Okay.
Aye.
I was actually technically, I think.
Yes. Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay, no, that meeting minute passed. Okay, the next meeting minutes we have is the Wednesday, July 12th meeting minutes. Which again, 3 pages of a draft, which I'll take a motion on as well.
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? Okay, that motion passes, so those minutes are official. The next meeting minutes is Wednesday, August 9th. Again, it's a 2-pager draft.
It was just the emergency, the actual business meeting in the library,
Okay,
an emergency board meeting that we called to get the business library.
like a motion on these two. Okay, second,
I'll second.
all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Seeing
Aye.
no opposition. That motion passes as well. And then the meeting minutes of Monday, August 14th.
And this is the meeting, I mean, it's good to vote on it anyway, but it's not, because it's not an official board meeting, there's not official minutes. So these are the minutes of the informational session that we held, but they're not up. And we'll make that clear when we post them online. These are just, this is just informational discussion about what we're saying.
Okay, I mean, going through this, I would urge people to look at this meeting because there's an official presentation. And other things that are important as well, so I'll think about it. Sure, I'll take a motion on these informational minutes.
So moved.
Okay, second. Okay, all those in favor, signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
Okay, great, see no opposition, those meeting passes as well, that motion passes. I think that's it, right? Is there any other? That's it.
That's it.
Okay. That's four, okay. Might be a record, actually. So we're gonna next go to the financial report, page 22 in your agenda. Sherry, if you want to take that.
Sure. So the revenue and expense report for August, on the revenue side, we've received $22,830 in state aid, or about 88% of that budget. We should receive the remainder of those funds typically in November. Expenses are slightly higher than last year at this time, due primarily to paying our liability insurance 1 month earlier. Otherwise, we're pretty much on track for where we were last year at this time. The auditors are at the library this week, September 11th through the 13th, finishing up field work. We expect the audited financial statements for review at the November board meeting. We'll probably have a finance committee meeting sometime in October after we get draft financials so that we can review them at the finance committee level. Does anybody have any questions on the financial report before I talk about the budget?
So the 88%, is that the 88% of the budget we received by state aid, is that correct? Because
For
there's
state aid, yeah, for the state aid budget, we received
Okay.
88% of the state aid budget.
Got it, so I might suggest, like for the public, just to, can we amend that to say, because it says the budget, so when I first read that, that's why I emailed you saying.
Sure.
Of this budget expected from state aid or state aid budget, because the budget could mean the whole one, so.
Got it.
Thank you,
Okay,
that's all.
sure, I'll address that, we can fix that. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, I wanted
Sherry,
to.
do you wanna? I'm sorry, Sherry, do you wanna have the vote on the financial report and the warrant before we move on to the budget, or would you like? to
Oh,
do that?
right, yes, we should do that, right.
Okay, so I'll need a motion on the financial report in the.
Can I ask you a question? Is page 32, the expense and revenue report, part of what we're voting on now? Or is that separate? Like, I'm kind of,
I think that's separate.
that's
The
separate?
expense and revenue report.
Okay, yes,
Adjusted budget.
32.
Yeah, and I think we're just voting on page up to page 30.
Okay,
Then we vote on the budget. just
Okay,
the
great,
budget
thank you.
in a second.
Yeah.
So this is pages 22 to 30.
Right, so includes, what you're voting on is essentially the warrant, which is going on the treasury report and the warrant.
I need a motion for that.
so,
Okay. Anything else? I need a second.
first and second, okay.
First and second,
First,
okay,
always
great.
second.
All those in favor, signify by raising your hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, seeing no opposition, that motion carried. Move on to the adjusted budget. Page 31.
Okay. So because we we had contract negotiations for this year, obviously, as everyone knows. We have to adjust the budget to reflect the decisions that were made through that process. And I wanted to present this to you so you can have a chance to look at it. We need to approve it. And what I'll point out really is that just the only area that has changed from the original approved budget is in staff salaries, library, custodial, support staff salaries, because of the negotiated salary increases that we had. It turned out that the total adjustment to wages was about 74,000, but because we had a librarian retirement, that salary line was adjusted to reflect that retirement and to add, the salary for a replacement librarian at a lower salary. That helps to offset some of that cost. So the net change to the budget is about 44,000. So the net change to the salary budget is about 44,000. We adjusted the health insurance budget because we had some additional funding in there for potential salary increases. We were trying to estimate what we thought we might end up with. So the health insurance line has been adjusted to reflect the actual costs that we think we'll have for health insurance this year. So that helped to offset the costs of the salary increases. And then in order to balance the budget, because our net increase to expenses was 17,000, I've increased interest income by 17,000. We budgeted very, very conservatively for interest income. As you know, last year we had I think it was $118,000 in interest income, and we only originally budgeted 35,000. So I thought it was, very reasonable to increase that budget to reflect what, we're likely to have a greater amount in interest income than what's budgeted.
So-
That's balance the budget.
So I have one question, just for clarity. This budget covers exactly what period?
Covers exactly what? I'm sorry.
What period? What are the dates of the budget that we're voting on here? Just for the public.
This is for fiscal year 24. So, June 23 to, I'm sorry, July 1st, June 30th, 24.
July 1st,
2023,
2023 to
June 30th, 2024.
Okay,
24, right?
okay.
So in a way, it's an amendment to the budget. Not an amendment, but it's updating the information for the budget that was passed by the voters.
Well,
That's
when it
weird
comes
thing.
to the library. Go ahead, Sherry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's just a reclassification of
Yeah.
lines. So that when we actually incur salary expense, we should be a lot closer to what the reality is, what we want to adjust the budget to what the reality is.
So the public approved bucket of money.
The public approves a levy.
Tax
The
rate.
budget,
Yeah,
the budget
amount.
belongs to the board. So this is and Sherry's just saying, we need to make sure the budget looks like what we know right now, it will look like. And so otherwise it would look like we had overexpensed some of the lines.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
100% certainty that we will overexpense the lines, and that's not good budget.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to clarify. It's like, we're not amending the budget per se. It's the same pot of money of just shifting it in order to cover things correctly.
It's just right. It's just reclassifying some of the lines.
The only thing the public approves actually is the levy and the budget, just to say again, budget reserved to the board. So we could actually, if we didn't change the levy, we wouldn't have to go to the public for anything. We do, as a matter of practice, but we wouldn't have to. So. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, any questions?
I have a question on page 32, which I think is just, I think it's further down, Jeff, or almost at the very bottom. No, okay, you're right. There was a whole bunch of stuff about the tax cap. See where it says
Yeah.
New York State cap limit official, all those. And so I wanted to both clarify for myself and for the public, and then also potentially for Laura. Do we have a tax cap?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it's the same thing as a school board. But-
Exactly.
So the thing that we can do that it's the, the fund, what is it called?
The fund balance.
Fund balance,
Yeah,
thank
yeah,
you,
we
that's
have,
it,
we don't have restrictions on the fund balance
got it,
to the same extent. I mean, the comptroller can still come call it,
yeah,
but we don't have the same level of
that's
very
the,
tightly.
that was the restriction I was there, thank you,
But the tax cap, so what we have going on above the budget
yeah,
is just, that's the max.
Yeah.
Right, so this number just represents what would have been the max, and this is how far under the max of the tax cap.
Got it.
we were when we put this budget in front of the.
I wanted to just run through those numbers to make sure I had us clear about what that was, okay.
You know, none of those numbers changed. That's, you know, that's how the original budget that we approved appeared.
Okay, any other questions for Sherry? Okay, I'll take a motion on this as well.
So moved.
Okay, Sarah, thanks. Second, Michelle. All those in favor, signify by raising your hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, hearing no opposition, that motion passes. Thank you, Terry. Moving on to personnel report, page 33, personnel actions.
Okay, so the only action, wow, that I'm requesting is permission to fill a 6-hour a week max library page position.
So moved. Second.
Okay, discussion? Okay, all those in favor, signify by raising your hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion is carried as well.
So I did have a real quick question, Jeff.
Okay.
Yes.
Are there any other positions you're looking to fill, or are we all full?
We're not full because we have, so some of these up above, we just put out. We put out advertisement on Nyline for a library assistant position. We're still seeking to fill this one here. The library one, we have an incumbent who hasn't started yet, but we have selected an incumbent. And we have right presently this second, we're interviewing for or have interviewed and are in the process of filling the senior library clerk here. So the
second one here,
yeah, the
35 hours.
35-hour week, the full-time
Okay.
library assistant or full senior library clerk.
So
So
my real question is, do you feel understaffed, or are you're running optimally?
we're getting close to where I want to be. There's still a few positions that, I mean, we're just having a hard time filling some of these positions. We have lists that look like a robust list. We call civil service, we get a list.
Right,
We canvass the list. No responses. So we're still in that situation, which I don't love, but you know, it's a reality. We are having, how about this? I feel way better than many of our fellow libraries every time I go to a directors association and I hear the challenges. To that point, Upper Hudson is convening on our behalf kind of a directors and maybe administrative task force committee to try to figure how we can get more people into the pipeline, because what our experience here is no different and maybe less severe than what a lot of libraries are experiencing right now. It's pretty rough. So
Okay.
we're gonna tell you, how can we get people in the pipeline if the library school here, which it appears to me is not focused on public libraries, and that never really has been, but they're really not kicking out a lot of public library graduates. How do we then recruit from Syracuse and Buffalo and some of the downstate schools to try to bring people to this area? Because I think we've had an extra amount of sort of library interested people with the library school here, and we've counted on that for years. We've been playing this on easy mode, and that is not the case right now. That school is really much more focused on data sciences and information science as sort of a hard science. And I taught down there a year ago now, and the students were mostly seeking corporate jobs. None of them wanted to be public librarians. A few of them wanted to be librarians, maybe academic librarians or special librarians, but
So we still gotta wait, we've got some distance to go, but we're moving in that direction.
We're doing good.
Yeah.
We're doing,
Okay.
I'm pretty pleased. It's just, there's a few key positions that I'm like, ooh, just.
Great, okay,
struggling
thank
with.
you.
So,
Yeah.
sorry, it's more interesting.
And it sounds like it might be following the trend of the teacher short, like that's a nationwide shortage, and I'm not sure if it's nationwide for librarians, but we have to be mindful of. There'll be it sounds like fewer and fewer.
Yeah.
Candidates, you know.
It's interesting because we've been talking about this for the better part of 15 years, the great profession and this massive retirement, and it is upon us.
Yeah,
And there's the local effect of like what the library school's doing and and that effect on local libraries, and then there's the larger national trends. In addition, as salaries go up quickly in a lot of cases, we're not used to public librarians. Mostly will stay in the field when they're in the field, but smart people with master's degrees have a lot of options right now. For instance, that PCO test got issued by the state. So there's just a lot of opportunities for people where people don't have to stay in the field. So if they're like, oh, public library salaries are whatever they are, we benchmark ourselves to other libraries all the time. We make sure we're competitive inside the field. But when people are leaving the field, that's a different kind of competitive. So that's where we are, right? That's kind of an interesting place to be in. So.
I think on the positions below $15 an hour, we would have any impact to raise it to 15? Or is it just the
I mean, I think Sherry can put that together for you pretty quickly if.
when you get more candidates, if it wasn't.
Well, so it's our page positions, and they're headed to 15 imminently anyway. I mean, it wouldn't, they don't have a bargaining unit, so they're.
Right, I'm just looking at the ones like this is from 22, this
Yeah.
is from, that's
They're
recent.
all pages.
Okay,
So,
okay.
yeah. The only people we have that are making under $15 an hour now.
Okay, and they're headed there.
And they're, I think. Tanya,
Yeah.
end of the year, and they reach $50 an hour,
Yes, December 30th.
December 30th this year, so.
Yeah, I just wondered if there's on recruitment, if there's any, would have any impact at all. If you raise that.
I don't
Now.
think so.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. Okay, so that motion passed, director's report.
So anyway, plaza resurfacing again, beginning towards the end of September. Hopefully Kevin will be back with us by that time, and he will be able to help our guys do the work we need to get done. We're talking about the geotechnical specialist later, so I'm not going to belabor that here. We'll talk about the library parcels as well. I just wanted to mention in my report. We have Christine is running our volunteer program right now, and so our focus will shift from the teens, the teen volunteers that we use in the summer. We're trying to get the adult volunteer program back up and running, and that's going to be our focus. Not that we're not going to have teens, but our focus will be on adults for the remainder of the year until we get ready for summer reading program next year. So have our new BCSD interns. I always like to mention that it's a great collaboration between us and the Bethlehem School District. We have some folks where we work on job training and job readiness skills for some of the students at Bethlehem Central School. They come here and they work for us as interns. So it's just that's a feel good story. I like to mention every time that starts over. And just lots of great programs. I hope you can see, like, one of the big stories this year is our return to normalcy as far as people being back in the building. Our circulation has been largely normal for the better part of a year, but now we're starting to see more people returning to the library, more programs, and so our libraries are doing great things with the program. So please do read through all of that. Mini golf, huge. We had a total of more than 1,000 people came in. It's been a couple of years, obviously, since we've been able to do library mini golf, and people love it. So there it is.
No, it's for zero injury.
Zero injuries. It's a lot. There's a lot of golf balls flying around. For there to be zero injuries, it always surprises me. So some folks, because we were open, they came in, they wanted to, they're like, oh, I need a quiet study area. And I'm like, we're doing miniature golf in here today, right? But it was okay. They studied, they used the computers. We route the mini golf around the outside of the library. So the sort of center of the library is a little bit less packed, but we had the Valley Cats mascot was here, and the friends did their ice cream social. They were out of ice cream in 20 minutes. So next time they will have to get more ice cream because you never know how popular that is. Anyway, so that was there. So lots of great work by our volunteers at the Friends of the Library, our staff people who were on that day. A lot of work to pull that off. It's just good to see that.
Yeah, it's great.
So lots of other fun programs. Read all about it in there. Storytime's getting cranked back up here shortly, but we have been doing our some of our summertime storytime programs that they're listed there as well. In addition, the extended school year collaboration with Beth and her outreach to the schools over the summer has come to its conclusion. In August, we're still doing farmers market. Still, it's a lot to set up, and then if it starts to rain, it's a lot to unset up and cover with plastic and figure all that stuff out. But that's good. Another very successful year of our collaboration with the town for Thursdays in the Park. Half of those are provided by the Friends of the Parks, and half of them are provided by Friends of the Library. So that's there. I just wanted to talk a little bit because we had some comments about self-checkout and last month we were talking about how people check out. So Phil took a look at that. So yeah, direct checkout at the circulation desk continues to be the most popular way for people to check out. But we have these three other methods of checkout: curbside pickup, the automated machines where people can check out, and now people can check out on their cell phone with the app right in the library. So those three methods continue to become more and more popular. That app way is probably the least known, but it increased in popularity by 71% over last year. So that's pretty impressive. So when we talk about RFID and automated self-checkout, there are large segments of our population that are interested in checking out in a sort of more mechanical way, but as well, there's lots of other people who like and appreciate the human touch. And that's never going away. So I just want to make sure that people know that there are some libraries that really try to push towards all automated checkout. And I don't think that's here. I think many people are looking for that human interaction, but at the same time, lots of folks aren't. So we want to take a look at that. So met about the bond process a couple times. Sharon and I met with John McPhillips from the Bethel School District. He's a great resource, so that's good, and we know a lot more about that process now. And then the expedition came to an end this summer. We had our UHLS library expedition, more than 40,000 check-ins all across the system at the 39 libraries this Wednesday. From I don't know what time, Chris, at 3 to 7, something like that, 4 to 7. At the Prime House in Colony, they're going to have their wrap-up party. So we'll have a table there along with about 25 of the young, and folks can come out and celebrate that. Phil and his staff did yeoman's work. Printing out all the gold and platinum cards were the source of those. So those have they go to people who complete their expedition either twice to get a platinum card or for the first time to get their gold card. So those are ours. At the same time, it's National Library Card Month. So we have brand new fancy dancy library cards that just were announced out to the public, and they've been extremely popular. I know there's people tending to those, tending to that printout machine back there heavily. So
Yeah, I wanted to let you know, I got positive feedback on those from several people that they really enjoyed the new options for the library cards. The artwork was especially.
it's all Phil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of good feedback there. Yeah.
All right, so that's that. We can take a look at the stats. I have it later on in the meeting. We'll see what your appetite looks like for statistics later on this evening, but we're doing really good as far as our numbers of people. Door count, again, we're up. I mean, look, last year, this time, I thought we were doing pretty well, 15,000. I thought I was going to have my first post-pandemic 20,000 month. Not quite. And again, I thought I was going to have my first post-pandemic 60,000 circulation month. We are achingly close to both of those numbers. So we're going to get there. But again, all of these, the non-circulation statistics about how people are using the library, you can see computer signups, 16% increase, the museum pass circulation, that's up. The study room sessions are up even in the summer. So just the story right now of this year is just the returning to the physical use of the library and all of those sort of non-circulation ways that people use the library. Meeting rooms, all of these meeting rooms, public meeting attendance, staff use of the programs, all those numbers are so. Go on, but I think I'll stop.
Okay, any questions for Jeff's report? Okay, we'll go into new business. So the first item is,
UHL's.
oh, I'm sorry,
If Lisa.
Lisa, UHSL report, if you're up there, Lisa.
I know you can't see me, but I am here.
Okay.
The Services Committee is meeting tomorrow evening to consider 11 construction grant applications. Unfortunately, the amount of money that we have is not sufficient to fully fund everyone, so we're going to have to make some decisions. I think we have a $1.07 million to give out, and we're a little over that, so we will be doing that. And then the only other thing I had was the expedition, which Jeff had covered. So that's it.
Didn't mean to steal your thunder, Lisa. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Okay, great. Any questions for Lisa? Okay, now we'll go into new business. The library property boundaries impacts for construction. Look at page 40 and 41.
So I just want.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
So this has been recommended by our architects and our landscape architects that all of our properties be combined into all the library properties be combined into a single parcel. You may not know, but you also may know that there are 4. This is enormous. Let's shrink this. There are 4 parcels. That's what's going on.
Yeah, sorry about that. Messed up the whole packet.
Mess up the whole packet. How big is that PDF? Okay, it's huge.
It's like this.
Yeah, it's enormous. Okay, well, you know what? On that printout, you have all the coach pieces of information. So as you can see here, this oddly shaped red piece of property is the original library property that was purchased by the school district for the purposes of building the library back in either the late 60s or 1970. That year, this is the parcel of land that was purchased. In the late 1990s, these two, the yellow and the green pieces of property, these 2 houses, this is 53 and 51 Borthwick, were purchased sort of for the express purpose of making an entrance and making the parking lot expansion. Those houses purchased and then knocked down. And then in 2009, there was renovation of the library's parking lot when this entrance was added onto the property, and all of these new, whenever you hear me talking about the new parking lots, that's what I'm talking about. 2009 doesn't seem that new, but there it is. That's on these 2 pieces of property. This last one is the piece of property that we purchased in 2017. Thank you, Tanya. And that's there. So there are 2 reasons that the properties need to be combined. One of them is that this building, as it sits, it represents the maximum amount percentage of the property of this original red parcel that can be taken up by building. Makes sense, right? The other thing is you'll see the proposed expansion of the library goes into both a little bit into the yellow and into a little bit into the green parcel. You cannot build a building that spans a property boundary where those 2 pieces of property are owned by different entities. It's like a guaranteed lawsuit 50 years down, right? We're not allowed to, architects are not allowed to propose that we build on that. So the only way to do that for both of the percentage reasons and the property boundary reasons is to combine these 2 pieces, all 4 of these pieces of property into one. Clear on that. All right. There's a lot of complexity involved in all of those things, but that's the recommendation. The second piece of this is who then holds title to this single parcel when it becomes a single parcel. Right now, the red piece of property, this big one, title is held by the school district, and that is necessary if we want to bond with the school district. Obviously, you can't bond on something you don't own, right? How would you bond on something that doesn't belong to you? So it has to belong to the school district officially so that they can bond when they originally built this building. And then when there was a small renovation bond in 2003-04, that also they had to hold title to the building during the realization of that bond. These 3 pieces of property, the titles are held by the library directly as an entity. So now, to combine all of these pieces of property involves 3 government entities. You have to have the town of Bethlehem is involved, the Bethlehem School District is involved, and the library is involved. So 3 different governments that are involved in this negotiating this process. From the town's perspective, from what I've heard, this is an administrative action. It's not a big deal. From their perspective, it doesn't change anything. None of these are on the tax rolls. They're all being used for legitimate library purposes. The question before us is, this needs to happen in order for us to proceed with any design, unless we want to do a major redesign and say to our architects, they need to swing the design in a different direction, right? So or we need to combine these 4 pieces of property into one, and then the legal details and steps are beyond what Jeff knows. But I think our landscape architect has begun those conversations with both the school district and the town to see what would the steps be involved in getting those all combined into a single parcel owned by the school district is their default answer.
Is there a possibility of co-title?
Say again?
Is there a possibility of co-title?
I don't know. I don't know the answer.
If a single entity owned everything, whether it's the district or the library. Does that solve, because you mentioned something about the red building. The largest structure you could build,
Correct.
but if there's a single entity and therefore technically speaking. I don't know if that increases the property enough so that you can build a little bigger, is that?
I
the
think
same?
that's what it is the same, and then that's one of those 2 points, and it's another reason our architect is saying, yeah, you need to have these properties combined into a single thing.
Mhm.
Because then that allows for the size of the design.
Okay.
Now,
So it increases the property enough so that you can actually build something that looks like that as opposed to having to build up. Do we know that for sure? Like if a single entity did that, or is that a separate discussion point also? Do you know what I
be able to
mean?
go up or,
That even with a single entity owning everything, is there enough space?
I can answer architects that directly, but my impression from their conversation with me is yes, that's why they were looking at this and they were looking at the size and scope of the addition. They were aware of the property size limitations when they were designing.
And the architects seem to indicate that as well, like that the properties needed to be joined before we can
Yes.
continue with the
Yeah.
project.
For 2 reasons, you can't cross the line
Correct.
and it's not big enough.
And the percentage. Now I'm imagining, and again, this is wild speculation on my part because I'm not an expert, but I'm guessing there's probably a variance process to cover more of the property. I have no idea what that process involves with the town. I don't know,
Mhm.
but
Right, I get the crossing the barriers part. I want to ensure that even if that piece were not there, so there's no barriers because a single entity owns everything. I want to make sure before we go further with the discussions about an extension that's not going to be up but going to be out, that is going to solve the problem of space, enough space to build a larger library that goes out and not up. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I got it.
Yeah, I want to make sure that so that we don't go through we think, well, it's crossing barriers and it's the size of the parcel for the building.
I don't want to speculate.
Right, no, I
I
understand.
will get to the.
Right, no, I was I'm sorry, I was looking for an answer tonight, but I want to make sure that that's part of the discussion, so that we don't assume that it's like, okay, if the parcel increases. Then the building as it's designed or similar design can be then built. Because a single entity, the parcels have been bled together.
Right, and the percentages are within
Right.
the tolerances or whatever they are. I will ask that question and I will get it.
Yeah, thank you.
And what does the percentage come from? Is that a town zoning? Who's,
Yeah, and
I would
that's,
assume it's a town.
because then it says though. But are we exempt from zoning? That's what I'm trying.
Right. Well, that's-
yeah, you know what? I'll find out the answer to that.
Okay.
And when we talk about, I mean, so we are actually the ground zero of this discussion of governmental immunity. I don't know if everybody remembers the RCS school district digital sign question with the town board, with the school board and the RCS district, but the building was in the town of Bethlehem. They built a digital sign that was inside the highway easement, but there was a digital sign zoning laws. So that went all the way to the appellate court, the Court of Appeals in New York State, and the school district lost and the town did. So that intergovernmental immunity isn't absolute. So there are restrictions on how far our intergovernmental immunity, both the school districts have and library has, that's an active area of litigation and exploration. So that was just an interesting, that was one of the first legal findings that the immunity, the intergovernmental zoning immunity isn't absolute and was never intended to be absolute. It's exactly what the ruling says. So
I may have missed this because I was so busy organizing my thoughts about what I wanted to say. Do you have a recommendation on who should own the entire thing? Are you saying is the library should try it or the school district should have it?
So,
There's no recommendation.
our landscape architect and / engineer and our architect are saying it is easier. And their recommendation is that the school district be the entity that owns title to the whole park. That's their recommendation. And then we get into this next question about if we were to do an expansion and renovation, how that's bonded. We're not blocked. Some libraries have to have special enabling legislation that allows a library to bond through DASNY. We have that enabling legislation that's already been passed for us. So that we are not blocked from that if the library was to end up with title. We had discussion years ago with the school district about that. They were not super interested in handing over the title of the building, though in most situations, the library and school district, they kind of hand this thing back and forth for $1 because they can't do anything. The school district can't take it. The library has exclusive use of it, and there's nothing the school district can do to say, oh, we're kicking you out, we're your landlord. It doesn't work that way. The library's rights to the property are very strong. So there's no negative of having the school district own the title is that then any construction that's done on the building is subject to SED, Office of delay, right? So it delays construction, it adds expense. And I'm all for fire safety. I think it's important. That's mostly their big job is to ensure that schools are fire safe, and that's good, but it's a higher code than is the New York Building Code, which is what we would be held to without that. So lots of school district libraries have title to their property and bond through DASNY. The public library is a local example, but many libraries have the school district hold the title because the bonding process is simpler and easier, and the rates are typically better.
So Jeff, you just mentioned that SED approval could add to the expense. of the
Some architect
project.
expense, yeah.
So what's the, how would you compare that added expense with how much they might save in bond rates? know
I
you
don't know.
what
I
the
don't
actual
know.
number,
I'm guessing that the back and forth, in my experience, when we have had projects go to SED, the back and forth is relatively small. The architect's costs are small.
Because I would have said, just from the materials you've given us,
Yeah.
it sounds to me like it would be more of a savings for the taxpayers to get that reduced rate on the bond.
Yeah.
And administration has changed somewhat over at the school.
Yeah.
So I think it's, I mean, my opinion would be that it's worthwhile to reach out to them and see if they would
And
put all the properties together.
our landscape architect has already reached out. They're also the school district's landscape architect. So they have already reached out to their office facilities to say, hey, this is a thing. If everything works the way the world ought to, this should be a very simple transaction that involves $3. It is very much not complicated. It's very much not controversial. But when you've got 3 governments and 3 boards of those 3 governments to explain what's going on, it can get complicated very fast. If people are like, no, we don't want to do that. And I don't know. We're beyond my knowledge about what that process looks like.
So I guess, but we probably could take that first step and
Yeah, I mean,
start moving in a direction and.
we've got to move on this because I don't want this to hold up a project. And if we don't get it done, it absolutely could. For both of those reasons that we've talked, if we don't combine these properties, that planned expansion doesn't happen. It has to be a single property. So if you want to do an expansion, it's that one, this needs to be one parcel.
But it could be the library's parcel.
It could.
I mean, or co-title. I mean, I just think we should think about before we say to the school district, hey, here you go. Here's 3 pieces of property. Not that there's an argument with the school district, but we should talk to them about, because we have a smaller budget, we're not gonna get the, it's like. You have to have a really good relationship with the school district anyway, but we're never gonna get the, I think there's a value in having the library hold the property that the library is on.
The only reason I suggest co-title if it's a possibility, and I don't know if it is that while I understand the school district can't do anything. with The property, they can prevent us from doing things with the property,
Right.
which. To mind is that they could prevent us from selling anything. Should that ever be an option? I mean, obviously, that is not something that we're looking at, but. It's a right that you like to have when you
Right.
have your own land.
And if what if a school board member has a problem with the design of the library project, it's not. Technically. I mean, they could delay it at
It's
least,
gonna get all blurry.
right?
But you need 4 though, because it's always majority vote, I mean, like,
Right.
a single simple member could,
But they could delay it, they could question
I understand, and there, you know, when we ask the school district libraries, that. All of these things exist, right? So the library's on the property and wouldn't think about it any other way. And there's lots of them that have the school district on the property, it's.
If I'm correct, the other thing I'll just point out is that, well, I believe the school district purchased the original plot of land. The other 3 parcels was
Yes.
purchased directly out of library budget
correct.
money, which
Yeah.
sort of militates a little bit more toward, we want to hold on to
it, right?
that in some.
That's why we've never, I mean, so we pay a little bit of water and sewer tax on these, because they're still, these are here because they're separate parcels. It's not enough money to worry about, and we do have a washing machine over here in this house that we do some laundry in, but we've never sought to combine those for that, I think exactly that reason, because there are some restrictions on school district property that aren't, because that aren't true for library owned property. There's just some building things about, just the things that the library's allowed to do with property that the school district wouldn't be allowed. So I get it.
Yeah, and I also really want to figure out the different rates we can get, because. I'm just skeptical that SED will move faster than anything. So that gonna delay, that's gonna increase the supply, the cost of the materials and everything, and there's a contingency in the budget of the project, which is pretty robust, which is great, relying on an entity that I have no confidence in, anyway, so.
Right, and the reason, if there's a reason that the libraries seek to own title to their building, it is literally.
Yeah.
That's the reason typically.
It has been somewhat, I don't know, post-COVID, but it has been streamlined. It used to be like a year to 18 months, and I think it had been gotten down to 9 or 8 or 9 months, or even shorter.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's why we pay, because we don't have anything to do with that. The architect and the project man, they handle it, they'll report back on the status of the SCD review, but it never comes back to us. That's.
Until I get an email that says, yeah.
Wasn't there kind of an issue too that there's money that we can get in grants for different things from UHLS and we haven't applied for them because of the timing and we can't get SED
Yeah.
approval in order to get the grants, so there's other things to think about.
Correct, it definitely prevents, I mean, if you're asking me why we're not agile on construction type things, that you're right, that's 100%.
Actually, I was going to jump in and say that from the perspective of, where I've sat on the services committee, it would really be nice to have some flexibility to apply for these grants in the way a lot of the other libraries that repeatedly put in some cases annually for construction grants. And, having the flexibility to be able to go outside of SED would really be a benefit for us. But obviously there are other considerations as well, but that exactly is one of those things that would be beneficial for us.
You need Jeff to know from us which way to go.
If I would need to know soon, if you're feeling very strongly that we don't want the school district to have the property, and the library wants to somehow negotiate with the school district to gain title to the entire parcel and then combine those parcels. I think that's the heavier lift, which is maybe why the recommendation is coming from. So yeah, we need to know that pretty quickly, because that's going to impact.
Do we have any sense of whether how the school district will respond? Like, are they gonna be like, sure, we'll do it, or are they gonna dig in their hands and be like, no way?
On selling us the property?
Yeah.
Okay, so the last time we approached the school district about this, We said, lots of libraries, the school district sells the title to the property for $1. What I heard was, well, we can figure out, and Mark was in the room when they said to me, that we'll figure out what the market value is for the property and you can buy it, right? Which is silly because if we raised money through taxes to buy the property from the school district, the tax rate would go up over here and go down over there by exactly, it's just, you're handing money off. From the taxpayer's perspective, it's a net zero change. So that's why we're not warring with the school district.
Yeah.
There's really no difference to the taxpayers, right? So if we use library money to buy a piece of property, it's a dumb and useless thing to do, from my perspective. Mostly this is a dollar, like I said, it's a dollar transaction. Just put the title back and forth. The other question I have is, will they accept the 3 parcels from us?
They might not.
They might not, and that's where that's where we're into the lore on how these titles get transferred. I don't know the answer. So
You're gonna talk to them.
I think before I can make a recommendation, I need to know more about the process. So, like, if it were to go with one way or the other. For example, once we vote and saying we're voting to recommend that the library go forward to purchase the whole thing, or we're the school. What happens? I mean, so basically our lawyer talking to their lawyer, I don't know.
yeah, and I don't know either.
Yeah,
So
so
that's
I
what
would-
we're out beyond the horizon on all of us. This is sort of an active area of
Sure.
discussion.
Yeah,
So
and then also, should the school district be even thinking about selling to what would be the asking price?
Right.
Roughly, yeah.
I will say this, I think that, despite all the concern, our preferences, I think if we find a path forward that works, the quickest path. If we find a path forward that works, I think we have to take that. Anyone who's been involved in a title disaster in trying to purchase property or combine property or do anything with property knows that can destroy, this could be the downfall of the whole process. So I think if we find a path forward, the first path forward is the one we kind of have to take if we want to continue to move at the rate that we're moving.
So I will,
I think we should, we'll should sit down and talk to the school.
yeah, we gotta talk to them and
then
we'll get our landscape.
Make a
architect and-
flow chart, this path, this is what happens, this path, this one.
Would title searches have to be done again? I assume when the library bought the parcels that full and
Yes.
thorough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the building project's completely on hold until this is decided.
Not really, they're running in parallel, we will get to a point where if this isn't decided. We're gonna, it might, there'll be a stop, we're not there yet, but it's a potential for that to be a delay or a stop until we can get this.
They're probably still working on some of the interior design features. And
Yeah,
that's
so-
what they're doing.
So, because we're in schematic design, that's moving along right now, that will be delivered to you in October, that's gonna happen, nothing about this impacts that, but this is a potential stumbling block that we just need to be aware of. I think it's solvable, but time is coming,
Yeah.
so okay. I just needed everybody to be aware, it's officially, everybody knows, it's this big picture, people can look at it in the minutes, anybody who wants to watch this can hear me stumble on, it is literally the most boring thing in the world, I'm sorry about that, but it's important. So you got where we are, you know the history of the parcel, this is how we got to be where we are, and we gotta do something about it, so.
Now challengers, the board was worth. I can call it.
Okay.
So,
Readjust this piece, yeah. Hold on, all right,
okay, so the next thing
related.
we want to talk about is, you want to talk about the debt service schedule?
Yeah, so the debt service schedule is part of this project timing school district coordination. So Sherry and I met with some small team of people from the school district, their attorneys from Whiteman Osterman, and their government financial advisors. So out of this meeting came just an example. People were saying, well, how much would debt service be? What kind of scope of money are we talking about? So out of this meeting came super draft, illustrative purposes only, marked up document here that talks about if we were to do a $29 million bond at current rates for the term of 25 years. So there's a lot of pieces of adjustment in there. It would be about $1.9 million a year in principal and interest payments on that bond. So when we talk about the scope of the project, our levy, that we're looking at the budget, our levy about $4.3 million. The principal and interest payments, you can sort of put $1.9 million and over 4.3, and you can guess what the impact would be on an individual's life tax. Right, so I just wanted to get this information out. They had repayment scheduled for 25 years. School districts typically do 15 years because the state aid comes in a 15-year cycle. So they're kind of tied to a 15-year bond repayment. The library isn't, because none of this is aidable by the state. Libraries don't get the same level of aid that school districts get, obviously. So just for the scope, when we're talking about the scope, and at the current rates of about 4.3%, that's what that bond reschedule rate would look like for 25 years. All right, there's a lot of pieces. There's fund balance money. There's the size of the project. What does that actually end up? What do we actually ask the public? What debt service schedule we look at? And Sherry, I don't know if I'm stepping on you, if you want to.
No, you've explained it really well. I think that the 15-year schedule, I forget what the total debt service would be on an annual basis, but it was a really high number. It was more than $2 million. It might have been approaching $3 million, and we just thought that's not doable.
So we just wanted to put that in there. At the same time, in that meeting, John was expressing his concern, and their attorney from Wyoming Ocean was expressing a concern about the seeker review. So the state environmental quality review part of this project that needs to get going. They were like, "Oh, is that moving yet?" And I was like, "Well, that's in the hand of our architects." So I communicated their concern at the school district that process needs to get going, and they're aware of it, and it's on the schedule from the architects to look at that secret process. In addition to that process, a smaller but also complicated semi-process is SHPO, which is the State Historic Preservation. This building, being 50 years old, is subject to review by State Historic Preservation Agency as well. So there's several regulatory agencies that any project would have to go through. The seeker process being the one that requires public comment. We're disturbing the ground. I believe this will be what's called a type 1 project, and that will involve a longer review in public.
So we talked a lot of things, just so it doesn't get lost, there are ways to draw that amount down by using fund balance, building funds, and if needed, shrinking the size of the project. I just want, because you said that, but I want to make sure it didn't get lost, that the annual amount of the debt service could go down using several tools.
Yeah, and I actually was very hesitant to put this in here, because as soon as we publish something, there it is, right? But I think because we kept dancing around, like, what does the scope of debt service and bond service, and they were very helpful to the school district. They could produce these things super simply, and they were happy to do that for us. So
Draft, illustrated purposes.
correct. I said, Kristen, mark that up. I don't want to scare anybody, but it's important. So
Helpful, it's very helpful.
yeah, and you have to know when we're talking about it's easy to talk about a $29 million project. What's that scope of that bond? Because again, with school district bonds, most of that money is coming back from the state. They don't actually borrow that much money. When you hear very high numbers in their bonds with us, we just don't have that available to us. So when we borrow the money, that's the money we're borrowing. Minus, you heard Lisa talk about the whole Upper Hudson library system gets $1 million a year for all construction grants across the pool of money that's available to us. It's just not that large. So we would apply for the grant. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, you have to put it in just one other way, the 1.9 extra. And add that onto our 4.3 or 4.4 budget is almost a 30% increase in each taxpayer's bill.
Correct. And again, we want to be hesitant, and John's other caution was this year particularly, people love to say, well, what's the rate? How much per thousand? How much for a $250,000? How much for a $350,000 house? What's an illustrative house? How much would my taxes go up for either per thousand or for a house like that? This coming year is going to be wild as far as the tax rates for the school district are concerned, because of that PSEG pilot. It's an enormous pilot. In our budget right now, it represents more than $200,000 in pilot money. You can imagine how much money that is. The same ratio for the school district is a large amount of money that comes in. That property comes off its pilot agreement, and that property goes on the tax roll. right? So from an ideal situation, it goes on at full valuation, everybody's tax rate might actually come down, which is awesome, except that they are likely, it seems, to file then a tax certiorari and want to reduce their tax burden and fight that out in court, which then is reduced, then the library and the school district are both responsible for paying. So what that how much per thousand in 2024 is gonna be wild. That's just, it's gonna be all over the place. I think it's gonna be very hard to nail that down, even for the school district. I mean, they'll be working on that messaging. I don't want to step on their messaging, but it is going to be an interesting year as we try to say, oh, it's, you know, this many dollars per thousand. I think that statement is going to be a difficult one to make, though they're committed to trying to help us make that statement at the school. So that makes sense. It's a lot going on. I'm sorry about that, but it's a large pilot. All the other pilots that we get, they're so minor. I mean, they really, it's a couple $100 here and a couple thousand a year. It's great, happy to have it, but it's not coaching. $220,000 or whatever it is now, 230 is a major component. It's 5% of the budget, right? That's a major part of the library. Just something to be aware of. There we go. So there's a lot of pieces, but and so from the school district's perspective, they're like, you know, we were like, oh, we're at time, and architects were agreeing that we could move this forward faster. He's like, whoa, you got a lot of things that you have to get into place before we can move. So those are just two different viewpoints, and I wanted to express that to you. Here. So again, there's nothing to do, but we're working with the school district. They seem very helpful. John, I just want to thank him officially here publicly. He's been very helpful in providing information to us. So and they seem very well. The last complication is, sorry about the library property. The local attorneys who are the most familiar with this work for Whiteman, Osterman, Hannah, and they are the school district's attorneys, so they are not available to us.
You sign a conflict waiver.
We might be able to sign a conflict waiver, though in this particular case with the property, I don't. That's more your expertise than mine. I don't know if they'd be willing to work on that, but there are two attorneys there. I'm hoping internally. We mentioned their names, and hopefully the attorneys at Whiteman Osterman can talk to them about just what this process looks like. Whenever I've taken a class on how the titling process for public libraries works, it's been done by Schofield Allen. Attorneys that talk to me about that. So I'll let you know as soon as I know more. Make sense?
Okay, moving on, the energy efficiency evaluation proposal.
Okay, so at the lab,
Project timing school district court, is that about the vote too? Is that, we cover that?
it was about the vote a little bit when we were talking about the seeker review and John's opinion that seeker review needs to get going right now in order for us to meet the timeline for the vote to be in May.
Okay, so are we going to discuss when we want to do our bond? The timing of our bond vote, or
We can.
are we going?
If you can,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Because I thought, that's what I thought that was about.
we can, yeah, I can, we can talk about that. So there's a number of different options for the bond vote. Assuming we can get all the rest of the stuff done here.
Yeah.
We just talked about. So if we want to talk about, you know, the school budget is May 24th or something. I looked it up, late May. But there are also other opportunities we can do it off budget. So there's many positives to doing it with the schools, so many negatives to doing it with the school, so many there's puts and takes on both things, you know. It's a discussion, it's worthy of discussion.
Yeah.
So
I think we should just be mindful that the district's running a bond in November. I think it's already gone out in the mail. Like I saw it in my email.
yeah.
So they're running, and obviously we can't make that.
Right.
And we don't know how long it'll be delayed with this issue of the property lines.
Right.
One thing was to consider was a spring bond vote to get it away from the, so when you're talking about the calculator. On like how much is
Yeah.
gonna, so you're gonna have a budget vote, our budget, their budget, the bus proposition.
Yes.
They always want a bus proposition. And then potentially our bond. So that's 4. And if the district runs anything else bond wise, that's 5 things will be on that budget vote. So there'll be 2 extra. I mean, there's always a bus prop and 2 budgets. So there's gonna be potentially 4 or 5 if we go for May. So just be mindful of that. That all those millions of dollars are gonna be next to each other. Was one thing. So I was thinking, we wanted to raise the idea of doing something in March, but now with the property dispute, it may not even be realistic because there are certain timelines you have to make in order to make announcements for votes,
Right.
for budget votes, and
And
we'd have to run it ourselves.
And I specifically, and I think we could, I mean, lots of libraries do run their elections, so we never have here, so I'm not the expert, but I think we can figure that out, it's a knowable thing.
We did it once.
Yeah, and I wasn't part of it, it was a long time ago, and I wasn't part of it for some reason. And then, the other part, but that's why I wanted to mention John's opinion from the school district was a March. He's saying it's tight for May.
Mhm.
Making a March
Mhm.
vote would be, I think you might get him twitching,
Mhm.
so,
Yeah.
and he's happy, he wants to come, he would be delighted to come talk to you, actually, that's the other thing I want to say.
That's good.
You know, maybe he would you guys like John to come here and have a conversation with us about bonding on the project, so he knows
Definitely, yeah.
more than me?
And then with the property line issue and the titling stuff, we may bump till the fall.
Right, maybe.
You know, maybe, yeah. I'm just trying to figure out, like, for us to have discussion, how do we maximize the probability that our budget's gonna pass and the bond's gonna pass? So like, and then we need to have some strategies, just timelines, and again, now that with the property line thing, that's might put it. Like March may not even be an option, may not even be, depending on how long that takes, but.
When we say that the library can run their own vote, that we can run it whenever, like we can pick a day and say the library.
Well, we can't, the quick answer is yes, the long answer is no, because it has to be done in coordination with the Albany County Board of Elections. Which we had a conversation, we talked to Jody, that's it's more complicated than I had imagined. And getting those voting machines not near the times when they're running primaries and other votes that they have to do is a thing that is complicated. So I think,
So within reason, within parameters. we can
Yes.
Pick a date.
yes,
Okay, and my initial thoughts are March is too early. On May, people are just voting, they're voting tax dollars. That's the main thing that people have on their minds, I think, in May. So yes, they're voting for people to be on boards, but they're also thinking about how much money those people's decisions are going to cost them. People don't come out to do things in the summer. Fall,
well, that's, and then there's a
Yeah.
surprise, there's a district vote in October, right? I mean, and I think if you get into the winter, you get complaints that you were trying to do it at a time when people couldn't come out and vote, and you're kind of having a hidden vote, I mean, and that happens anytime it's not on the May proposition, you just have to include that in your messaging.
don't think and I'll say out loud, I mean. If we were to do November of next year, that would be November 2024, we don't want that under any circumstances.
Do September, October kind of thing also.
Just, I mean, it's important, this is a political question, that's where it moves out of.
Exactly.
So it sounds like the earliest would be March, then there's May, and then there's early
After
fall,
May.
yeah.
And there is a mechanical and a cost question, we have to cost something on the election. And then, but the overwhelming thing is. How are we gonna present it so the public has the best opportunity to really look at the project? And so putting it on the May budget is people are used to voting in May now for school stuff. However, it might get lost in everything that's on the ballot. If you highlight it and you give people lots of time, then it's gonna be a true public vote on this project. So I think the public will support it, but it's a political question. So.
I guess I don't know that much about it, but I feel like from what I know about the elections we do have in May, it's really a very low percentage of people that turn out for that.
Yeah.
And so if we split it from that and they're literally having to come out to vote just for this one thing, who will come other than the people that don't want it? Do you know what I mean?
You're gonna have a turnout problem no matter what it is. I mean, turnout challenge, because it is a low percentage. The library does really well if you look at the history on the May ballot, but it has a significant amount. We actually hit 80%.
Yep.
But we're not putting up a bond, we're putting up
Right.
a tax levy under the tax cap.
Yeah.
People love the library, especially when they don't raise taxes that much, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, we're putting up 4 million versus, so it's gonna be 4 million, the district's up above 100 million now, they'll have whatever. Then they're gonna put a bump prop, which I don't know if they're 25 or 30 million, I don't have no idea what that, so I don't think it's gonna get lost. I think the cumulative That's my concern, is the cumulative number of millions of dollars that are gonna, people are gonna say, I've got 5 choices, I wanna not pay the total cost, so I'm gonna pick 2 out of those, or whatever, that, I'm concerned that a
Yeah.
$30 million, even $20 million bond would be, I've gotta choose what. So again, I think we just continue the discussion.
I think Sarah's right, that the people who turn out are the people who want to stop something. I mean, the town lost a very positive complete streets project, special votes and. So, I mean, it's definitely a lot to consider.
And I agree too. I think when we're in with the school, you've got a lot of people saying school, maybe not so great. Oh, library, yes.
Well,
So I really, I know that sounds very simplistic, but I think lots of time that's how it works.
So I think we have to have something to shoot at as far as like a timeline. And we have to keep talking about it. I don't think we need to make a decision, obviously, but we should have something to shoot at.
The default date for Ashland McGraw is that May 24th. So that's their schedule is aimed at that. Their decisions about Seeker and all of that stuff are pointed towards that. So.
I think we talked with John, and then I think we could ask him McGraw and just say, what do we need? What do you need to do? What, if the board is interested in separating it from the May vote, what's the positive, the advantages of going for March, what's the advantage of waiting to fall? I mean, waiting to fall, then you guys a whole nother 9 months of, you're not gonna break ground until, whenever, but. So I would grill them, that's what they're there for, to say, so get some more information from John, what the district's looking for. And then get Ashland McGraw and just saying, what can you do for us? Like, what is your experience? What can you do for us?
Yeah.
What would you advise? And then the board will have to decide.
And in any case, are you interested in me asking John to come and talk to you in October? Seems like a good.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Just keep the communication going.
Okay, any other on that subject? Okay, going to energy efficiency evaluation proposal, page 43 through 45.
Okay, so this is the expansion, it was not covered under our original contract with Ashland McGraw. This is the expansion to, at the last meeting, but not a meeting that we didn't have. We agreed in concept that we were interested in pursuing getting a study underneath, getting some numbers underneath what would be other and alternative HVAC systems, greener options for the building. So we wanted to get some numbers under that, return on investment numbers. This is the price for that study. It's above my authorization limit, and at the meeting when we agreed in concept, it wasn't, we didn't have a quorum. So what I need is your permission to move forward and sign this. And an addendum to our existing contract with Ashland.
So the deliverable will be what exactly?
A study
So a
about,
report on the study.
well, yeah, sure, a report. The action is the study, the deliverable is a report that will inform you about the cost efficiency of going. The default answer is just to throw another air handler that is gas fired and electric for air conditioning and heating on any expansion of the building, right? All right, existing HVAC system. Here you guys go. Love me talking about HVAC. The existing HVAC control system can run that. It is perfectly capable of handling another air handler. That is the default answer that was included in our architectural study. Through some of the conversations with the board, it became evident that they were interested in pursuing some sort of alternative heating and cooling system that would provide less carbon footprint and cleaner energy for the building. So in order to get you to say, oh, this is a good idea and you should do this, or no, the return on investment is forever and it's not worth it, or this is what the dollars look, if you're doing this, you might be doing it for some non-economic reason. So that's what the report should be.
Any questions on that? Also, okay. Any motion?
So
Okay, all in favor, signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Okay, seeing no opposition or hearing no opposition, that motion carries. And then other new business.
I do.
You do? Okay.
So
Sure.
in your, unfortunately, it just came into me this afternoon and I don't have a copy of the proposal. Thank you. So you, last month at our informational meeting, I gave some information about the sort of ambiguous results of our geotechnical evaluation survey with all the drilling. They need to come back and drill some more holes. And I asked for some explanation of why this is necessary. It's absolutely recommended by both our landscape architect and our architect. I'll give you the answer from our landscape architect. Great question. The additional borings, we are looking to get a better understanding of the strength and thickness of the sand layer encountered above the soft clay at locations closer to the proposed footprint of the building. They don't believe, because they're looking at that sand layer, which is the top layer, we have very sandy soil here, that top layer above the slip-y clay, not slippery, but slip-like clay, very wet clay that's down beneath that. So they don't believe they'll need to go down further than 25 feet, which was last time they kept going and going, trying to look for something a little bit more solid down there, and they didn't find it. So they want to come in the places where the building is actually proposed to expand to, and make sure and study that sand layer and make sure that it has appropriate physical properties that would support it. So that's important, and I think we need to have that. And again, it's above my
That's kind of.
it's above my authorization limit, but yeah, you don't want to.
Yeah.
I feel like, is the current building stable?
I actually asked this question when they were here. I said, the building's been here 50 years. I don't see cracks everywhere. So wouldn't that be an indicator? And he's like, oh, yeah. And then I don't believe this was done on that original parcel purchase. I have, Jen has been pouring through the records, as have I, to try to find anything like this. It may not have been a thing that was done in the late 60s. Building is fine. We're floating happily above clay as I wait to gloop slowly down to the center of the earth. I don't know. So
Isn't there a college library somewhere where they had to remove a significant number of the books? Somewhere in
yeah,
Massachusetts.
because they're heavy, right?
Because the building was sinking.
And books are super heavy, and that's the
Yeah.
problem. It's heavier than
Because when they did all the calculations, they didn't factor in the weight of the books.
books.
Yeah.
300 pounds a square foot. So as it turns out, yeah, we need to do this. So
Yeah.
that would be great. But it's interesting. It is interesting that there's not like it's a lot of clay down there. It's a lot of really wet clay.
Yeah.
Make a pot.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor, signify by saying yes. Raise your hand.
I say, I imagine if they don't find something down there, then we go back to the architects and say,
Well,
what can you build?
Well, that's, and actually, so the structural engineers, which is, we haven't talked to you very much about
Most
this.
of it's scary. So.
Thank you.
Yes,
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. I'm excited about.
No,
the geotechnical
But you go back and say like, you know,
Say like, what are we doing here?
what are you gonna do? You know, if you don't find what you're supposed to find.
So what has been said, and again, I'm not an expert, but it was been indicated to me that the design of the building from a structural standpoint would have to be very different. If you're basically trying to float that above whatever we've got going on down below here. Sounds like Mexico City. So, you know, clay and sand and all that stuff. But yes, I'm heartened by the fact that the building still exists.
Yeah.
And we've been here for 50 years, seems great. So,
Right.
in any case, for $8,000 seems like money really well spent.
Exactly.
To figure out, they want to just get some more closely defined information about that sand layer. So,
People here 25 to 50 years from now will actually know what's in it.
yeah, right. Someone will thank us someday.
Exactly.
No. Oh,
Good. Okay, great. So moving on to any other new business. Business, okay, old business, committee membership. So on page 46, there's just a draft.
I think you just
You
passed it
attest
actually.
it.
This is just a draft. If people have ideas or people we want to talk about it, more than happy to. The purpose of the committees going back in history was to streamline actions and conversations of the board. So we have to remind ourselves, we try to do committee business details and then bring the results to the board. With the building committee, I think I put all board members on it. I think basically the building project is a board project. It's not, it doesn't lend itself to a committee. I think there's not so much interest in it. Finance committee obviously is Michelle, Sharon, and Laura, if you want to join the finance committee.
Oh.
And-
I thought it was the building, yeah, so.
Yeah, sorry about that. I mean, apparently in our conversion to PDF, we lost our formatting for the finance committee. That's nice.
Right. So the finance committee is it doesn't meet that often, but it's very important, obviously. And Sherry does a great job with that committee. The other committees, personnel, nominating and policy are the working committees of the board. When we have other issues, we form special committees or task forces or working groups. If something comes up, but those are just recommendations. So, you know, if you have any comments on those, please, you know.
I would just note that the personnel committee, you know, I was on it last year and we did a lot of work on the evaluation. Whoever was on that, I'll have to run Jeff's evaluation. I do have the protocol and all the things set up, but.
Well, so I kind of figured I would do that unless Lisa, you're desperately wanting to.
No, welcome to do that. And I was going to say, I'm currently on the policy committee and I would like to stay on the policy committee as well.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Can add into that committee. The issue with the once you have 4 members of a committee, you have a meeting. Yeah, you have a quorum board. So that's the only issue. That's why I put 2 people on. I'm ex officio on all the committees. We can work on that and or have someone not show up or whatever, talk about it, or we can just have a quorum of the board and, you know, put it out for public. You know,
But now that we're in the post-pandemic era, when we have a quorum meeting, that means it needs to be in person under those in-person regulations, right? So it's just to keep that in mind if we end up with a quorum at a committee, it just adds to the complexity of.
which is fine. And the policy committee is trying to do a tremendous job moving the forward on the policies and updating the policies. So I think at least I'm more than happy to answer that. So.
But Lisa, you're willing to stay on personnel too, correct? Lisa?
Yes, I will stay on, although next year I'd like to cycle off a bit.
Okay, any other changes or suggestions people have? Kind of moving along, I guess do we need a vote on that?
You see them. So
Everybody sees their committees. Okay, so next thing is the public services reorg. Public services reorg. page 27.
Okay, so this has been talked about for several months. It passed through the personnel committee. And this is my proposal to reorganize the public services department. The key issues here are that I'm requesting that we reclassify a library clerk position to a library assistant, and we reclassify a librarian 2 to a librarian 3 to allow me to do the people I want to in these positions, and to allow for this eventual structure of the public services department. There are some ongoing costs to increasing the classification for those 2 positions, obviously, and that's what you're voting on here. You know, the who's where in what department, that's not really a board issue, but when we spend money and we spend ongoing money, that needs to come to the trustees, obviously. And that's what I need your vote on in order to with my reorganization.
And as Jeff said, the previous personnel committee discussed this at length with Jeff virtually, and I think it was a couple of months ago. Said yes, that they would support it.
Okay, any questions on the proposal? Okay, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, seeing no opposition, that motion.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Plaza Entry update.
Yeah, not really much to update, so.
In September.
Yeah, it's all, we're signed, our MOUs have been signed,
Yeah.
so I have the returned MOU, Nancy Milkman came over. We got to talk and I signed everything and we're all set, so those MOUs are all set, and we're just down to scheduling. And trying to have Kevin come back from his leave in order to help us with that project, so that's where we are. Any update, I'll keep you abreast of when I know a little bit more about the timing of that, fall is here, so.
We're gonna do a lot of public outreach, so let people know why we're doing this. and what
Yes.
We're doing.
Yeah, and just, I don't wanna jump the gun.
No, once you
When
get a
we're-
date, then you can fix it.
Right, you got it,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, any questions on that? All right, policy committee update. Give some memorials, requests, and maybe opportunities policy. Go ahead.
So this is not a first read of this policy, just background information, the board. Requested that we develop basically, this is all commonly known as naming rights for different places and all this, so the board, the policy committee started drafting. A policy. It is not ready for first read. The last thing that we presented last month was the text was the same, but we had embedded footnotes in it. Places where the committee wanted feedback before presenting possibly an edited draft or going forward with a first read. So in this, for this month, we've taken out the footnotes, but captured the thoughts where we want feedback in these, we call it like a thought, it used to be called a thought document, but I'm not sure what it's called anymore. So
Discussion points doc.
discussion points, yes. So there are some major things that the board should discuss, and I don't know if we want to start discussing them tonight by maybe picking out from one of the major ones or some of the small ones, but as we synthesize the some of the responses from last month's meeting and the footnotes, we realized that right now this is a single policy on gifts, memorials, and requests, as well as, we're not calling it naming rights, we don't like the term, naming opportunities. So the big decision point we think is just, should there be a single policy that covers gifts, memorials, requests, and naming opportunities? Or should there be one for gifts and donations and one for memorials, requests, and naming opportunities? Or one for gifts, donations, memorials, and requests, and one for naming opportunities? So that's probably the major point to be decided. And then another thing is like what opportunities are extended for naming, which is spaces, rooms and spaces, rooms, spaces and furnishings, or room spaces, furniture, and programs, which is what was raised last. So those are the major points. The medium decision points are mostly about some restrictions, things like that. So I'm throwing it out either to Mark or the board is like, as to, do you want to start the discussion tonight on any of these points? Because without the feedback of the board, the policy committee can't really go forward.
Yeah.
Well, I have
Yeah.
a comment on the gifts and donations policy. In the past, I believe Jeff and library staff have dealt with that without a policy in place, or there's a policy in place.
There is. Yeah, but we could still,
I guess I'm thinking, don't fix what isn't broken.
The version of the gift part of it is really an edited version of that. So the gift policy didn't change all that much, we just kind of, so it even appears almost like two policies, because there's 2 pages of it.
Yeah.
But basically, what exists in this draft as a gifts one is an edited version and a collapsing and maybe a little enhancement of the existing policy.
Okay. Okay, because I know we started this entire thing just from a public request on naming opportunities. Not really any discussion on gifts and donations. That's never been an issue in the past. So I wasn't sure of a need to combine them, but if it's really just the policy that already existed, then
Well, the naming opportunities was added, so the question is, do you want,
obviously, and then the gifts and donations, yeah.
so are you thinking there should be a single policy for the donations and the naming?
No,
or-
I was thinking we didn't even need to address gifts and donation, because that wasn't an issue that was at all brought to our attention. It was just naming opportunities, what instigated this entire thing. But you're saying that you really just rehashed a current policy, so it's
So,
not-
so from what you're saying, that this would be a revision of gifts and donations that can be, it was probably up for review anyway, because we're backlogged. That we can consider this as a separate policy that of just a revision of the existing policy and review that as a first read, and then undertake naming rights as a brand new policy.
I would, first of all, Charmaine, thank you to you and the policy committee for drafting this. I would propose an omnibus policy, but we break it up into 3 things. Because, well, I'll get into it first. I think we should break it up into financial gifts. So you want to give money or stock options or whatever you want to give to the library. Physical gifts. With, physical items. I'd like to donate this book. I'd like to donate this table. And then the third portion of it would be naming rights. I think that should cover everything. And under kind of broader categories. I appreciate your point about fixing it, don't fix it. And that gifts have never been an issue before. And that this was brought to our attention under naming rights, which I think is something we have to grapple with, but I think that as part of the discussion of naming rights, other gifts and sponsorships have come into the discussion. Namely, that what if you want to sponsor a program?
I've got that right now. I
And even though I understand that we may have allowed that.
Yep.
In the past. I would strongly recommend that this policy say that we do not, that we do not accept sponsorships for programs. And I've thought about this a lot, about why it's different. It's because money, I mean, and we can cover all in here about, we have ultimate discretion, sole discretion, we can refuse you, we can use it for whatever we want. We can take a gift, we can sell it, we can do whatever. Programs a moving target. We cannot control it. We can say this, it should be this and it should be that, you cannot do this, or you cannot do that, but nonetheless, you get someone up there to talk for an hour. And that is a lot of things that we can't control. So I would recommend a strong statement against that in the library, recognizing that we've done it in the past. I just think the world has changed a little bit. And then, just an overall, and again, just thank you so much for drafting this. My recommendation would be to make this as broad as possible. The less proscriptive it is, the better, the more discretion given to the board. And on the question of naming, and what the dollar amount is, which I think is really what the big question was around this, or one of the big questions was around this. I think that we write in that the board decides on an annual basis or a biannual basis. What's the dollar amount? And that can change based on circumstance, like we're building some rooms. Who wants to name them? And just, the market, at certain times, the dollar amount might be high, it might be low. And obviously if we don't want to change this, what equals naming rights now will not be the same market value in 10 years. So that's a lot of thoughts, and I'll put them in an email because we're running low on time, but again, thank you for drafting this. A lot of food for thought. I think that there's a lot to work with here. What is that? Sorry.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to jump in and say one of the things that we had also talked about at the policy committee level was, who is responsible for the decision making, and, obviously naming opportunities would come to the board, but the majority of these other gifts, donations, memorials, maybe not memorials, but gifts and donations are done at Jeff's level. And, to me, there is a logic to keeping those separate as policies. So while I understand what you're saying, Caroline, a large policy, I think it also makes sense from the perspective of, whose responsibility it is to make the decision to keep it perhaps linked policies, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Most of the text on you'll see me turning, I only hear out of one ear, so that's why I'm like reorienting my seating, but most of the gifts, memorials, and requests section addresses the director's responsibility. So again, that's kind of a rewrite of the existing policy, just kind of cleaning it up and maybe doing some. So I think, Lisa, that might address what you were saying. The gifts is mostly isn't at the purview of the director, it's the naming rights, is that part of it that comes to the
Yeah.
board. And what I heard you say, Caroline, was that. So one of the questions was, do you want to, so we've been reading different policies and drawing some text from different policies and then figuring out what makes sense for Bethlehem. Some of those existing policies have a grid and they name dollar amounts. So what you're saying, I think, is we should have a grid and the board will have to decide the amounts, but then we indicate in the policy that the amounts that are indicated in this policy are reviewed annually, biannually. So you're saying yes for the grid, like target.
I like the
amounts.
idea of a grid to start, but yes, that it goes to vote annually. We might not change it for a while, but.
Yeah.
We can.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Can I ask a question about the opportunities? I was looking at some other, library policies and they included collections as something that could be named. Did the committee to consider that and just decide against it? Or?
I think it falls under the B, what did it cover? So room space, like furniture or fixings, a collection might be a fixing, like a collection of books. So what came up at the last meeting was, should it be rooms or spaces only, or room spaces and basically things, or room spaces, things and programs? So it could be, a thing could be a collection.
And I kind of have the same feeling that these are all related and it just makes a lot more sense to try to keep them all together. Plus, I think you run less risk of having some kind of inconsistency between the two policies, by keeping it all together. So I just, that's my sense, is it should all be one. And especially as we're about to have this building expansion, I think we would want to have that grid and think about what are those spaces worth. Certainly seems like a timely thing.
So I do have a question to your point, Caroline. Is the story series a program?
There's the question. So let me just describe.
I mean,
what's
when
an
we talk about program, it's like,
right. So
when we narrow or water.
in the past, when people have sponsored programs, and there's been several, there was the, we had the former board president had a speaker series for years and years and years. The Wenzel lecture, Dr. Peter Wenzel was the board president for years, and there was a sponsored series. So the programs were determined by the librarians, but the series was named after. So the one that is in my lap right now, we have a person whose parent passed away. Previously, there was a storytelling series where they gave us, let's just say $1,000 a year for 2 programs that were bringing storytellers. So the library said, okay, thank you for your $1,000. That was for 5 years, so it was a $5,000 gift. And the librarians picked out storytellers, whether they were exactly $500 a piece. The library wanted to have storytellers, so it was a way of funding that. And we named the series after the person they're memorializing. And that's what I get. Those are the actual questions that I get. It's less about, I don't think it's ever been, Jeff, I want you to bring this speaker in and have that person do a thing. It's like, I want to do a storyteller speaker. And I get all it. And I just need to know, I would love to know whether the answer is yes or no on that kind of thing. And then how much money it is before we need to come here and talk about it.
And I think it's in how you draft it. I mean, I think that it would have to be clear that if you want to give money for the library to determine in its sole discretion 5 programs about history,
Right.
the history of the United States, then maybe. But I mean, I think where you run the danger of that is I would like to pay for 3 story hours about X.
Right.
And
Right, and I don't.
and just making, I mean, and obviously there's ways to draft around that. Or to put yourself in a position where you're accepting one kind of story hour, but not another, which is even worse.
Exactly.
So, I mean, everything would have to be in this, it had to be very carefully drafted, in the sole discretion of the library staff, you have no say.
And then that's similar to.
You can design, you can say, here's the area,
Yes,
but then you walk away in the library.
I mean, and maybe we could even come up with categories,
Yeah.
preset categories, history, children's.
Right, music.
Current events.
Let's
something like
sponsor
that.
a Monday
Yeah.
music
Yeah,
series.
well, I also heard people say keep it broad, but what you're talking about is under the medium decision point is besides accept alternate forms of financial contribution, which I know Shari has an opinion on, is right now as written, throughout it talks without restrictions. There's at least 4 places with that text, and so it says, should we maintain in these 4 areas where it's specifically stated, we accept without so basically, that allows the library to retain control. So if you want, I can go through and highlight the sections where that appears, that text appears, because what the medium decision point was, right now, there are 4 places where it says without restrictions, we're taking it. You the donor cannot put restrictions. So the question was, should there be restrictions either placed by the board
Right.
on that or not? So that's the medium decision point.
No, I
Okay.
don't have an answer for today. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we
We
have to,
discuss it.
we have to discuss it, and I think more importantly, like. Policy committee, again, we can. Work on drafting it. It's about.
Yeah.
I think it's about how we draft it.
One other thought is the library, and I'm not like super, I almost think you could say this is the first time we're having a naming policy. You could leave programs off and say this is like, we're testing this out. But so another approach could be the library could say, these are the series that we have. If you would like to sponsor, whatever, however it's put, this is what's available. So you take the choice away, it's we're directing. We're saying these are the opportunities that are available.
Broad categories, history, children's.
Right.
Current events, things like that.
And that's what happens now when the most common donation is $50 donation. I want to put a book and put a book plate in the front of the book and have that be in the collection. No one gets to determine the books that go in the collection. You say to them, oh, thank you for this gift in honor of your mother. What were some areas? And Christine is the recipient of these. I look at Christine and say, history, we need some, some books of greater weight, some like interesting and weighty books on something with a little bit of legs that will stay in place for a while about history or art or whatever, and then the librarians do the selection. So I think we can make that clear.
And just for the benefit of the public listening, that's not to limit speech in any way. That is because the library staff is trained very specifically and works very hard to ensure that the public library is meeting those free speech parameters that we have, and not in violation of overemphasizing one thing over another.
And for that reason exactly, it is my opinion that we should not have naming rights for programming. Just my opinion.
It's the cleanest. I don't disagree.
Do you think we have enough to continue?
Yeah, I think we have enough to go back to, I think you're right, we go back and have a policy.
Right, well, we can start integrating some of the feedback, we can start working on you might know, you probably,
Yeah.
the grid. And then we'll hold some of these points for continued discussion, like should there be programming or not, so we have enough to start working on, okay?
I get excited about stats. Next month, keep those down the road, fine.
So is there any other questions or concerns on that? I mean, a lot of questions.
Actually, I did have
Today.
a very, very, very quick question.
Sure.
I noticed there was mention of donated gifts and possibly reselling them. Is that already a policy that we have? Is that part of current policy already?
The library is free to dispose of any gift.
Okay.
Except if
That was
it
my
comes
only
to the
question.
board, and the example that we have that's recent was, remember the Native American storyteller.
Right.
That we were given, that had that collection had some entailments to it.
Mhm.
So that was brought to the board specifically, and we discussed the entailments, the board voted on at that time to accept the gift with the restrictions that
So you
came.
could never sell that.
I just didn't know if that was a new part of the policy or, so you answered my question. Thank you.
I think all of page 1 was wordsmithing, to be quite honest with you, a little bit of clarification on wordsmithing. Page 2 is brand new.
Again, I know how it is, let's get off the ground, so
Yeah, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, moving on to review of the 2022-23 library statistics.
You wanna,
Sure.
you wanna do it?
Sure.
Go with this
Yeah.
one. Just,
I enjoy watching you geek out.
okay.
Exactly.
Like kickoff anyway.
Exactly.
Bill's over there twitching, watching you search for it this way.
Let's ask the important question, how many statistics?
Exactly.
Just so,
Broad review.
so many statistics. All the dashboard, I will say again, this dashboard is on Tableau. It is public and available to you at all times. You want to go in here and noodle around with our stats. They are available to you. Okay, I'm gonna focus in on a little bit about what I was talking before. These are circulation trends. So this is a long form circulation trend. This is when I came in 2000. That's when our statistics start, because that's when I started here at the library, right? Why go before that? When I talk about the height of the library circulation being in 2010, 2011, that's right there. You can see that. This green line is our total circulation. Here is a valley that's represented by the pandemic. No one will be surprised. Notice it never went to zero, but there we were. But the story I want to talk about here is that effectively, I keep running over my numbers here. You can see that our circulation has been for a little while and continues to be like it looks like pre-pandemic numbers. Okay, within, let's call it 5%. We're here.
Jeff?
This is yeah.
Can you
Oh,
share your
Wanna
screen?
share that out. Yeah, is that helpful? I apologize, Lisa.
Thanks.
Yes, that is an important part of this whole thing. Here you go. There. You with me now?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
fantastic. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right, so there's our circulation, and I've been talking about this for a while. Our circulation bounced back actually very quickly after we reopened with curbside only. That's this little area here. As soon as we open the door, it's still down a little bit, fewer people in the library, but our circulation, here's our. Anyway, this is very recent. These are the peaks for the summer. Our summertime is usually the busiest months of the year. So this makes me very happy when I look at circulation. I'm like, hey, our circulation, the percentages of e-circulation and physical circulation is only shifted maybe 5%, not a big deal, but those were on trend from before the pandemic in any case. But there we are. All right. That as opposed to door count. So here we'll look at the door count. Door count statistic. Here we go. Get this out of my way. Just all right, so here are the door counts back again since 2000. Long form, those peaks again in 2010, 2011. That was right after the financial crash. Everybody was the library's favorite. Everybody loved coming in here all the time, using all our services. Pre-pandemic, the trend was already down a little bit. Here's where it went down to zero. Obviously, during the pandemic, went up and then back down to zero again. So what I want to focus on is this trend where our door count is still not at the same percentage as our circulation, but this trend line is on track for us to be going back towards. So that's what we're seeing when I'm talking about this summer, when I'm saying we're seeing use that begins to look like our peaks now here in August of 2023 begins to look like December 2019. So we're still, that's the slowest month of the year. December typically, and August is one of the busier months of the year, but we're getting back to where those numbers are starting to be comparable again. And so we're seeing use that begins to feel like pre-pandemic use. But what's interesting to me is the lag in the bounce back of the circulation statistics to all of the other use of the library, which is what this door count represents. That's programs, story times, and people coming in here for public meetings and studying and all of the other things that people do in the library that aren't related to statistics or to circulation are represented in this door count number. So I think that's interesting.
What's the shading?
That's a future projection. That's the AI trying to say that that's what it's guessing. Those numbers will be based on the trend lines of the past. It's extrapolating
Okay.
out to 2025 for us. So
And also to actually compare door count numbers, you have to assume that programming is exactly the same as it was back in
But-
2011.
Yeah, it's
You
not,
think
right, we're
as
getting there,
vibrant-
right, we're,
Okay,
it's not there. It's
so- Yeah, really? I mean, statistics are a bit malleable, right?
Well-
So the door count, it's lower, but our programming is also still lower.
So I have numbers based on that too. Yay, so, we could go.
Let's work that out, lead into that.
Thanks, Michelle.
And to compare that against the school district's enrollment numbers, because the population in Bethlehem is going down every year.
So, let's take a look at, so here's this, checkout number, this is just sort of pandemic, peri-pandemic use here, but if I get rid of if I keep only, in-house programs, so here's attendance for in-house programs, these are the peaks before the pandemic, that's what that would have looked like, and then down so low, up a little bit. Low, and then now, you know, with our staff and what we're doing, the pandemic, where's my?
That's just a 21.
That's the 21.
Yeah.
Where did it go? Oh, no. Are my programs not here? I'm sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, Phil.
I don't traditionally update the.
Okay.
Well,
Did we see that did I see that in an Excel? We saw that in Excel.
Oh,
Oh, I don't have that, Michelle, I'm sorry. That's, anyway, so, use of public spaces. That one goes here, okay, so, oh, got it. Public use of meeting rooms, let's look at this guy. So this is how the public uses these meeting rooms. Before the pandemic, you can see fairly regular, like a heartbeat. Every year, just a repeated pattern. There's our pandemic, and then here we are, but we're actually starting to see some of the use. In February 2023, we saw higher use than what we were seeing in lots of pre-pandemic. So this number is kind of, this June 2023 is kind of in with sort of the average of these rooms. So we're beginning to see people, this trend line is upwards, and we're beginning to see people come back and use these rooms for.
So this graph could argue in support of greater public meeting space.
Yes, and so what I take here with these peaks, what I see these peaks from before, being so very consistent, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. What that tells me is that we're up against the capacity of the room to accommodate public meeting. There's just, it would go higher, it would go higher, it would go lower, but it's so very consistent. What you're seeing is just you're at some capacity because there's only so many rooms on desirable nights when people want to be in here. And now we're exceeding that number in some cases, but that average is again very similar to what we had pandemic. So I think that's where I would have said I would have had some trouble when we were in here saying we need more public meeting rooms. But we're getting back to the point where people are back in the library wanting to use our public spaces, and again, running up against those capacity limitations, because I'm hearing about it from people. People annoyed that they can't get the room isn't available for me at a time that I want to use it. That group has the time that I traditionally had the community room on these days. So I'm starting to get those again. Or I didn't get my kid into the turbo program. I wanted to get in there. I couldn't. I didn't have access to the Bethlehem Historical Association meeting because the room was at capacity. So that is a common drumbeat that we had previous before the pandemic all the time that we just haven't had in 3 years. But I just wanted to put some numbers underneath that to say I'm starting to hear those complaints from the public again about lack of access to the meeting rooms and lack of capacity in the meeting rooms that we do have. We just sort of had a little bit of a reprieve from that because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to jump in and make a comment because someone recently was talking to me about it, and I was like, I'm not really sure we've thought about this with regard to use of the public space, smaller spaces, and that is the fact that there are a lot of people that are working remotely now and don't have offices and maybe are looking at some place like the library to come to use the space to do a meeting or use some of the Wi-Fi or whatever it is. So yeah, I see the study rooms, but I think we will probably see some pressure on those rooms by what were not traditionally who used to use them, right? So I just
I
wanted to
think-
make
think
that
you're right,
observation. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I think you're right. And I think when I talk with people that are sitting at the study carrels, there's a definite preference to be in a study room if the study rooms were available in a more liberal way that the study carrels are available, right? So when someone goes in and uses one of our study rooms, they go in there knowing that there's a 1 hour, you're guaranteed an hour. If someone else is waiting, you're gonna have to get out of there. There's a lot of people that would like to come in and have a private room. It was definitely the preference, but those spaces just aren't available. We don't have enough of them to meet that demand in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
And those are those quiet study, back at the end of the fiction section, those are those 5 study carrels back there are once again the most coveted real estate in all.
Yeah. And we may also see some more demand for, printers and things like that because of that same reason. So just wanted to throw it out there.
Great. Thank you. All right, but I'm gonna let you guys go. If you want to know about, we'll talk about digital very quickly. We'll do digital content. We'll just talk about the percentages. This one in the top left is a good one to look at. This is just the percentages of e-circulation in the green compared to physical circulation in the blue. Obviously, this is July 2020. This is when all we had was e-circulation. But people say, oh, well, I'm assuming that after post-pandemic, e-circulation is going to be way higher because so many people. If you look at the trend line in e-circulation and you just follow the way the trend was going, where we are today is not fundamentally shifted from where I would have assumed we would have been by now anyway. So definitely this area from here to about here is definitely different. Those e-circulation statistics were significantly higher, but it's not significantly different from where we were before the pandemic in a way that is unexpected to me, especially considering the rapid shift from ebooks from regular audiobooks to e-audiobooks. That is driving growth in e-circulation right now because fewer and fewer cars have CD players in them. So people who want to listen to audiobooks in the car are downloading them from some source, whether it's a library or something else, and using those in the car. So at some point, I think this is it. This pink line, this is our e-audiobook circulation, is going to exceed and catch our ebook circulation right here at some point in the near future, which I think is kind of interesting. So the ebook circulation is actually fairly steady. Increases pandemic, but kind of steady since the pandemic, whereas the e-audiobooks have just been straight up and continuing on a pretty rapid increase since the pandemic. All right, I'll let you guys go.
So if you could just maybe email this out or email instructions how to get this information.
You bet.
Would be helpful. What's the instructions part for me?
Okay.
Thank you for putting all that together.
Yeah.
It's kind of like this is a preview of what I do when you hear me do the state of the library for the staff at Staff Development Day. This is a little mini version of that. I just think it was, we started talking about this at July. That's the beginning of the new fiscal year. It's a good idea to talk about where we are. So you're welcome.
And do you have stats on music? We talked about that a number of years ago.
Yeah, we can pull them. Yeah,
You can keep, because I know it's a lot smaller, obviously, but I'd like to see where that's going. You're not going.
you bet.
Okay, excellent. So the next item of business is the director evaluation timeline and process, pages 52 to 63. Unless you got a question.
Sorry, Mark, to interrupt. I didn't realize we had left old business, and I did just have one quick comment to make on the meeting that the last meeting I wasn't able to attend. We had public participation from Laura Cooper, who mentioned a hearing loop in public meeting areas and possibly including that in our building project. And I just wanted to say, I thought that was a fantastic idea as someone who suffers with hearing loss, that I hope that we can include that in the building project.
And I think you're gonna get a lot of push from me for that as well. And actually, we were talking with her, she was really, she came and talked to me specifically about. We may be able to, before we get anything, any building construction, we may be able to put hearing loops at the desks. That are smaller in nature, and we can, that's something we might be able to implement nowish. And then with the assumption that that the hearing loops can be built into whatever room we have. The assistive technology that we have in the community room right now is infrared based. And she was explaining to me that it was very much less desirable than the T-coil loop with the hearing aids built into the room with the hearing loop. So she said, yeah, I appreciate that you have that. That's great. And I can just tell that she's right because of the number of not users we've ever had use that system, and it's difficult, and you have to have an extra device.
Yeah, guys, Lisa, is there any Upper Hudson money that supports sort of with equity kind of programs or upgrades, you know, because that would be increasing inclusion for folks who are hearing?
It would be that
I mean,
construction.
Not off the top of my head that is like across the board, but I'm sure it would be something supported if we put in a construction grant. You know, it definitely fits within the parameters of what the guidelines are for, you know, the grants.
It also is something that is a little bit attainable and imminently available for a member item. I mean, those are the kind of things that we start to put in the other place. We're doing it anyway. Like we're doing this because it's the right thing for us to do. So those are the kind of things we can push on. You know, I know we had a switch of our assembly members, so that some of those relationships that we had been working for a long time are no longer there, but that doesn't mean it's still not possible. Pursue those.
Okay, any other old business before we go to the director evaluation? Okay, director evaluation timeline and process.
This will now be Sarah's purview, but technically this is from last year. Do you mind going over this just?
No, please.
Okay. Timeline from last year, it kicks off in October, so therefore any changes or revisions to the materials, which includes the board survey that board members fill out and the staff survey should be sent, I guess, to Sarah, maybe within a certain couple of weeks or so that any revisions could be made. And I think you have copies of it, but we can just maybe send it to the board. So if any people want to suggest any changes in either the rating scales or the items, they should be sent within a couple of weeks so that the material can be revised, because technically speaking, following this time frame, the evaluation process begins and that material gets sent out to board members, their material, and then the staff folks get their link. And I forget who I worked with. I worked with somebody who received someone on the library staff was working with me last year. Krista, you?
I created the survey.
The survey and all stuff there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she'll be working with you in terms of making sure things get directed and so any changes to the text of the instruments should be sent to Sarah within 2 weeks.
Those are
the
copies of these printouts of those are available.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I feel like it would be worthwhile to probably revisit, because I think there were a few places that maybe we might want to tweak some of the language based on some of the feedback we got through responses. And I think a lot of people probably recall that because the data was shared with us all, so.
That's a personnel committee.
Okay, to be 100% honest, I didn't really hear what you said.
She said there may be some tweaks to the language of the instruments based on the responses that came from, I'm guessing you were talking about the staff response, Lisa, the staff instrument, the responses that.
Yes.
The staff instrument is much shorter than the board instrument. So I think this is the board instrument. So that was created all last year. It was brand new, I think, or we really kind of upgraded it. And then the staff survey, I think only asked a couple of questions, but yeah, we can definitely. The employee survey, yeah.
So that's the second.
61
starts the staff evaluation, so that's.
So maybe, I don't know, maybe we should solicit some input from the staff. I don't know.
Sure. Oh, we can talk, I mean.
So maybe that should
as
go
a
out,
personnel committee.
the personnel committee think about
Yeah.
writing this up, saying this was what was used before.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that didn't change from year to year. Any suggestions should be forwarded, and then whatever you choose to do with that is fine, and then the board instrument, the board's pretty much should just say what worked, what didn't work, and then I can meet with you if you want, and just, if it would be helpful to see how I set up my computer to.
Okay.
Okay, any questions on that? There's people who took a quick look at it, thank you. Both Charmaine and Sarah for your work on that. Other old business, I said that, future business.
I wanna, this was my, I asked Jessica was on, so I'm gonna bring it to our policy, the policy committee. I raised this after the discussion of the program this past spring, that the ethics statement. I don't know if the board has authority to amend that, but right now it talks about the second bullet. I think, I don't know if it's there, if you have a copy of it, but
Oh, wait, I do. Yeah, it's in the packet.
it is in the packet. The second bullet from the bottom talks about making sure that we maintain access of materials, and I would like to propose an materials, so the second bullet from the bottom, it talks about trustees must be prepared to support the fullest effect of the library in resisting censorship of library materials by groups or individuals. I want to propose that say materials and programs. So we, I don't know if we can revise it now or just go policy.
We can just revise now.
So I'm proposing an amendment to the ethics statement to say materials and programs.
And Chris is saying, and services.
That's what I said.
And services.
And services.
And services, yes. So that's a proposed
Okay, so motion,
motion, that's a proposed motion.
okay, second, okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by raising your hand or saying yes.
Hi.
Okay, motion carries, done.
Yeah, great.
Ethics statement
So
is-
do we need to re-sign our old ones for that amendment or?
I'll bring it in.
So I want everyone.
Yeah, so how do you evaluate it?
So in the next meeting, all of us have to re-sign an amendment to say that.
Okay, great. Any other future business? Any public participation? That's a good question.
Thought we were gonna get some public. No,
Look at that. You did that pretty good.
no,
No public participation?
no public.
Okay, I will take a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Second, great.